The city was alive with noise and motion. Cars honked as they weaved through traffic. Street vendors shouted to sell their goods, and people hurried along the sidewalks with hurried steps, each focused on their own lives. Among them walked a man who seemed like any other, dressed simply in jeans and a jacket that had seen better days. He moved without urgency, blending in perfectly. Yet his eyes observed everything with sharp attention. This man was not ordinary. He was a billionaire, someone whose name could fill pages in the newspapers and whose presence could stop conversations in the elite circles he usually moved in. But today, he wanted nothing to do with his world of luxury and wealth. He wanted to see the city as it truly was, to witness life in its raw form, to step into the shoes of those who had no bodyguards, no assistants, and no privilege to shield them. He wanted honesty, simplicity, and truth. As he walked, he passed a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. Its sign was faded, the paint peeling in places, but it had a charm the bigger cafes and franchises could never match. Curious, he stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled softly, announcing his presence. The smell of freshly baked bread, coffee, and a hint of sweetness from pastries greeted him warmly. Behind the counter, a young maid moved with remarkable efficiency. She was in her late 20s, her hair tied back neatly, her apron smeared with flour and coffee stains. Despite the cafe being crowded with people trying to escape the rain outside, she worked tirelessly, cleaning tables, serving coffee, and attending to every detail without losing her smile. Even when a few customers grumbled about small mistakes, she remained calm, responding politely and ensuring that no one felt neglected. The billionaire watched from a corner, quietly observing. He had seen many people in his life, but there was something different about her. She didn't act out of fear or obligation. She wasn't performing for recognition or reward. She was doing her work because she genuinely cared. There was a dignity in the way she moved, in the way she spoke, and in the way she handled every small crisis that arose. He noticed how she helped an elderly woman who struggled to carry her bag, how she gently guided a child who had spilled juice, and how she remained polite even when a group of impatient customers complained about the wait. Her energy was endless, and her patience seemed unwavering. Watching her, he felt a strange mixture of admiration and curiosity. Who was this woman who carried such weight on her shoulders yet remained unbroken? The cafe owner, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a kind face, occasionally looked at her with a mix of concern and gratitude. It was clear that he relied on her more than he would admit. Without her, the cafe might not survive the daily rush of customers and the challenges of running a small business. Yet she never seemed to complain. Even when he offered to give her extra rest, she always declined, insisting that everything was fine. The billionaire returned home that evening, but his thoughts lingered on the cafe and the maid. He remembered the way she had moved with calm authority, even when chaos threatened to take over the small space. He thought about her smile, her gentle words, and her unwavering focus on the people around her. He realized he wanted to understand more about her world, the challenges she faced, and the strength that kept her going. The next day, he returned to the cafe, this time sitting closer to the counter. He ordered a simple coffee and watched as the maid navigated a particularly busy hour. Two customers argued over a seating mistake, a child knocked over a glass, and a small kitchen fire began when the stove overheated. Yet she handled it all. She calmed the arguing customers, cleaned up the mess without fuss, and ran to the kitchen to control the fire before it could spread. Her bravery and quick thinking amazed him. He had witnessed people in his world panic over minor issues, but here was someone who faced real problems without fear. She didn't hesitate to step in, to protect others, and to ensure that everyone remained safe. In that moment, he understood the depth of her character. She was not just hardworking. She was courageous, selfless, and incredibly human in a way that money could never teach. After the chaos settled, he approached her, trying to compliment her for her actions. She smiled politely and said, "I'm just doing my job." There was no arrogance, no desire for praise, only a quiet strength that made him pause. Her humility made her even more remarkable in his eyes. He wanted to know her story, to learn what had shaped someone into such a person. Over the next few days, he found himself returning to the cafe more often. He engaged in small conversations, learning about her life, her family, and the sacrifices she made to keep them safe and cared for. She spoke about her younger siblings, her parents, and the little joys and struggles of daily life. He listened quietly, not revealing who he was, but feeling increasingly connected to her resilience and determination. He learned that she often worked long hours, juggling multiple responsibilities just to make ends meet. Despite the hardships, she never lost her kindness or her sense of duty. Even strangers noticed it. They would leave the cafe with a warm feeling in their hearts, touched by her genuine care and attention. He realized that true wealth was not measured by money, but by character. And she had more wealth in her heart than most people he knew in his world. One rainy afternoon, he arrived at the cafe to find her helping a mother calm her crying baby, while also managing orders and cleaning tables. She moved effortlessly, almost as if she had trained her mind and body to handle chaos with grace. He felt a deep respect growing inside him, mixed with a sense of awe. How could one person hold so much strength, courage, and compassion all at once? As he watched her, he thought about the life she must lead outside the cafe. The challenges, the exhaustion, and yet the unwavering dedication to helping others. He realized that he had been living in a bubble of wealth, where problems were solved with money and kindness was often performative. Here was a woman whose life was far more complicated, yet she handled it with a grace that he had rarely seen that day. As he left the cafe, he made a silent promise to himself. He wanted to continue observing, learning, and perhaps in time, finding a way to support her without undermining her independence. He didn't want to interfere with her life carelessly. He only wanted to witness the beauty of genuine human strength, and, if possible, to be part of it in a meaningful way. He walked back into the city, the rain soaking his jacket, but he hardly noticed. His mind was full of thoughts about courage, humility, and the quiet heroism of ordinary people. The maid had left a mark on him, one that he knew would not fade easily. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of humility and awe for someone who lived a life completely different from his own, yet showed qualities far greater than anything money could buy. From that day onward, the cafe became a regular stop for him. Not because he wanted coffee or attention, because he wanted to understand the strength of someone who carried so much with such grace. Each visit revealed more about her resilience, her kindness, and her unwavering spirit. He began to realize that she was not just a worker behind a counter. She was a force of nature, shaping the lives of those around her with simple acts of bravery and love. And so, the billionaire, dressed as an ordinary man, continued his quiet observation, learning lessons about life, humanity, and courage from someone he never expected. In the crowded city full of noise, he had found a story worth listening to, a life worth understanding, and a hero in the most unlikely of places, the small, hard-working maid who faced every day with bravery, kindness, and an unshakable heart. The next morning, the city was waking up under a soft drizzle. Streets were slick and reflective, giving the city a shimmering look as people hurried to their workplaces, umbrellas bobbing like colorful mushrooms in the gray morning. The billionaire, dressed in his usual disguise, walked calmly through the crowd, heading straight to the small cafe he had discovered days earlier. He had returned, not out of curiosity alone, but with a growing desire to understand the life of the maid who had left such a lasting impression on him. Inside the cafe, the familiar smell of coffee and baked bread welcomed him. The place was busier than the day before. Regular customers chatted quietly in corners, while a few new faces took seats near the windows, watching the rain fall outside. Behind the counter, the maid was moving with her usual energy, her hands skillfully balancing trays, wiping tables, and handling orders without ever missing a beat. There was an elegance in her movements, a rhythm that spoke of experience and dedication. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the kitchen. A small fire had broken out when a short circuit in the stove caused a flame to jump. Panic immediately filled the air. Customers screamed and stepped back, unsure what to do. The cafe owner froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the sudden chaos. But before anyone else could act, the maid ran into the kitchen. Calm and determined, she switched off the stove, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and put out the flames before they could spread. Smoke filled the air, but no one was hurt. She guided a few frightened customers outside, her voice steady, her demeanor unshakable. The billionaire watched from his seat, utterly amazed. He had seen emergencies before, in both his personal life and his businesses. But no one had ever handled a crisis with such composure and courage as she did. Even the city firefighters, who arrived a few minutes later, complimented her quick thinking. Yet, she merely nodded, saying, "It was nothing. Everyone is safe, and that's what matters." Her humility struck him deeply. Here was someone who risked herself to protect others. And she did it without expectation of reward or recognition. After the fire was put out and the cafe returned to normal, he approached her quietly. He wanted to understand her better, to know how a person could possess such bravery. She smiled at him politely, as she did with everyone, and offered him a fresh coffee on the house. He accepted it and began a conversation, careful not to reveal his true identity yet. She spoke with sincerity and warmth, sharing pieces of her life with him as though he were just another customer, another human being she wished to treat with kindness. He learned that she lived in a small apartment, with their younger siblings and aging parents. She worked multiple jobs to keep her family afloat, yet she never complained, never asked for pity, and never expected others to notice her struggles. Her day began before sunrise and ended long after the city slept. She cooked, cleaned, and managed everything in the cafe with tireless determination. She even helped teach her siblings after school, making sure they had every opportunity she could provide. As she spoke, he realized the depth of her character. It wasn't just the bravery in moments of danger. It was the small, quiet sacrifices she made every day. The countless acts of care and responsibility that went unnoticed by the world. He felt a mixture of admiration and humility. Here was someone who lived a life that demanded more courage than anything money could ever buy. Over the next few weeks, he continued to visit, observing not just her bravery, but her kindness. He saw her help an elderly man who had dropped his wallet, reassure a crying child whose parents were momentarily distracted, and even comfort a young woman who had been rejected at a nearby office. Her actions were natural, effortless, and genuine. Every day, she gave more than she received, and yet she remained content, focused and humble. One afternoon, while he sat near the counter, he noticed her moving toward a customer who appeared unwell. A middle-aged man had slumped over a table, pale and dizzy. The maid knelt beside him, asking gentle questions, checking his pulse, and providing water while calling for medical help. Her quick thinking prevented a potential health crisis. The man's family arrived shortly after and thanked her repeatedly. But she waved them off, saying, "I just did what anyone would do." Her courage wasn't always in dramatic moments, he realized. Most of it existed in small, quiet acts that showed her compassion and humanity. She treated every person with dignity, regardless of their appearance, wealth, or background. She cared for her family, her colleagues, and even strangers, all without expecting anything in return. Each gesture revealed her strength, patience, and heart. The billionaire began to reflect on his own life. He had everything he could want materially, yet he had rarely witnessed or experienced such genuine selflessness. His world had been full of pretense, people pretending to care because it benefited them. But here was a woman whose life revolved around helping others simply because it was right, because it mattered. The contrast between her world and his own left him feeling humbled. One rainy evening, a particularly challenging situation arose. A young boy had wandered into the street during the downpour, chasing after a fallen balloon. The maid, noticing him, ran outside without hesitation. She scooped the boy up just in time, shielding him with her body from the pouring rain and the rush of vehicles. When she returned to the cafe, soaking wet but smiling, the parents of the boy ran to her, grateful and worried, but she only shrugged and said, "He's safe. That's all that matters." Her bravery and selflessness became legendary in the small neighborhood around the cafe. Customers spoke of her in awe, neighbors admired her dedication, and even city officials took notice. Yet she never let it change her. She continued her work as before, moving with grace, handling crises, and offering kindness to everyone. The billionaire observed all of this quietly. Learning more about the strength of character that money could not buy, he began to feel a connection to her, not as a wealthy man observing a poor worker, but as a human being witnessing the essence of courage, humility, and integrity. He realized that he wanted to be part of her world, to support her in some way, and perhaps to learn from her example. One day, he finally gathered the courage to ask her about her dreams. She looked thoughtful, pausing as if weighing her words. "I want my siblings to have opportunities I never had," she said. "I want to help people when I can. I want to make life a little better for those around me." Her words were simple, yet profound. She didn't speak of wealth, fame, or recognition. She spoke of care, responsibility, and the quiet hope that her actions could make a difference. The billionaire felt a deep admiration for her. He realized that she was more than a hero in small moments. She was a role model in the truest sense. Her life was not easy, yet she faced it with courage and grace. Each day, she made choices that reflected her values and principles, and in doing so, inspired everyone who came into contact with her. That evening, as the rain continued to fall, he left the cafe with a sense of purpose. He no longer saw himself as an observer. He wanted to find a way to honor her courage and selflessness, to ensure that her efforts and sacrifices were recognized in a meaningful way. Yet he knew he had to approach it carefully. He didn't want to impose his wealth or interfere in her life without understanding it fully. He wanted to be supportive without taking away her independence, to help without diminishing her dignity. Over the following days, he continued visiting the cafe, watching her act heroically in small moments and sometimes in crisis. Each act left him more impressed than the last, and each day he learned something new about humility, courage, and kindness. He began to understand that true heroism was not measured by headlines or applause, but by the quiet, consistent efforts to help others, to act rightly, and to carry oneself with dignity and compassion. By the end of this period, the billionaire knew he had witnessed something extraordinary. He had met someone who embodied courage, kindness, and integrity in its purest form. The maid's heroic actions, both big and small, had left an indelible impression on him. He began to imagine how her life could change if she had the support she deserved, how her courage could impact more people, and how her story could inspire others. In the heart of the city, amidst the rain, noise, and ordinary lives, the maid continued her work with unwavering dedication. And the billionaire, watching quietly, understood that he had found not just a remarkable person, but a lesson in humanity, a reflection of the strength, resilience, and selflessness that make life truly meaningful. Weeks turned into months, and the small cafe continued to be a place of warmth and resilience amidst the bustling city. The maid had become a figure everyone quietly admired. Regulars knew her by sight and voice, and even newcomers felt the care she offered. The billionaire, still in disguise, had become a frequent visitor, sitting quietly in a corner, observing her and learning more about the depth of her courage and character. One afternoon, the city was hit by a sudden and intense storm. The wind rattled the windows and rain poured heavily, forming small rivers along the streets. The cafe, usually a safe haven, began to flood. Water seeped in from the windows and under the door. The owner was in a panic, unsure how to protect his equipment and the customers. The patrons were worried and confused, looking around for guidance. In the midst of this chaos, the maid's calmness shone through. She immediately took charge. She moved quickly to place buckets under leaks and shifted tables and chairs to higher ground. She coordinated with the staff, making sure customers were safe and comfortable, handing out towels to wipe wet floors and moving valuable equipment out of harm's way. Her energy seemed limitless, and she did not allow fear to overtake her. The billionaire watched silently, completely amazed by her ability to remain focused and decisive under pressure. As the storm intensified, a particularly dangerous situation arose. A large tree branch had broken off and crashed near the cafe entrance, blocking the door and putting several customers at risk. Without hesitation, the maid guided everyone away from the area, ensuring they were safe inside, while others tried to remove the branch. She refused to let anyone panic, constantly reassuring them that everything would be fine. Her courage in the face of danger was remarkable. The billionaire felt a deep admiration for her. He had seen leaders, celebrities, and even public figures face crises. But the sincerity in her actions, the selflessness, and the determination were unlike anything he had witnessed. She was not acting for recognition or reward. She acted because it was the right thing to do. Her bravery inspired everyone in the cafe to help as well, creating a collective effort that prevented serious damage and injuries. After the immediate danger had passed, she noticed that some of the cafe's equipment had been damaged by water. She quickly assessed the situation, making a plan to repair what could be fixed and to salvage what was valuable. The owner looked at her with both relief and admiration, grateful that she had managed to save most of his livelihood despite the storm. When he finally spoke to her privately, he told her how impressed he was with her composure and bravery. She smiled humbly and said, "I just did what I had to do. We all have to look out for each other, especially when times are tough." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of someone who had faced countless challenges and chosen courage over fear repeatedly. The billionaire, still observing, realized that her heroism was not limited to dramatic moments like fires or storms. It was evident in the way she treated every individual, from the smallest customer to the most frazzled colleague. Her strength lay not just in her actions during crises, but in the consistency of her character day after day. She had built a life defined by integrity, empathy, and resilience, and it showed in every gesture, every word, every decision. Over the following weeks, he noticed more examples of her dedication. She would stay late to help a student from a nearby school who struggled with homework, make sure elderly neighbors received groceries, and even spend her own money to help those in urgent need. Each act revealed her selflessness, and he felt increasingly inspired by the quiet heroism that surrounded her daily life. One day, a young girl who lived in the neighborhood came running into the cafe, crying. She had lost her pet, a small puppy that was very dear to her. The maid immediately sprang into action, organizing a search with other patrons and even venturing outside into the rain herself to help look. Hours passed, but she remained patient and encouraging, never letting the child lose hope. Finally, the puppy was found stuck in a nearby alley, wet and frightened. The maid carefully rescued it and returned it to the girl, who hugged her tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. Her bravery and determination had turned a frightening situation into a moment of relief and happiness. The billionaire felt a deep respect for her. He realized that true heroism was not about headlines or fame, but about caring deeply, acting decisively, and persevering with integrity, even in small, everyday situations. Her actions had touched countless lives in the community, yet she never sought recognition. She worked for the betterment of others simply because it was the right thing to do. And that was more valuable than any wealth or status he had ever known. As the months went by, the cafe became a hub of community support, largely because of her influence. People started volunteering to help when she needed it, inspired by her consistent kindness and courage. Local businesses and residents admired her, and word of her selflessness spread beyond the immediate neighborhood. Yet she remained humble, focused only on helping those around her and keeping the cafe running smoothly. The billionaire observed all of this, quietly noting the lessons she was teaching without even realizing it. He saw how strength, courage, and compassion could ripple outward, inspiring others to act better, care more, and face challenges with resilience. He began to see her not just as a remarkable individual, but as a symbol of what humanity could achieve, and driven by integrity and empathy. One evening, after a particularly challenging day that included a minor accident in the kitchen and a confused elderly customer wandering off, the billionaire approached her. He wanted to thank her, to express his admiration, but words seemed insufficient. She looked at him, smiling as she always did, and asked if he was okay. Her concern was genuine, her presence comforting. He realized that his role as an observer had changed. He no longer just watched. He wanted to support her in a meaningful way, yet he also knew he had to be careful. He could not simply offer wealth or assistance without understanding the value she placed on independence, dignity, and personal integrity. Any help had to respect her choices and empower her rather than overshadow her courage and efforts. Days later, he thought about the time she saved the child from the street, the way she managed the flooded cafe, and how she treated everyone with respect and care. Each incident had taught him something profound about the strength of ordinary people, the resilience of those who face life's challenges without complaint, and the power of consistent, humble courage. The city moved on, as it always did, but the cafe remained a beacon of hope and kindness in the storm of everyday life. The maid continued her work, tirelessly giving, guiding, and protecting, never seeking recognition but quietly changing the lives of those around her. Her heroism had become an integral part of the community's story, a thread of light in the midst of ordinary routines. The billionaire, sitting quietly in his usual corner, understood that he had discovered something rare. He had found a person whose life exemplified courage, humility, and unwavering kindness. He began to imagine ways he could help her, support her vision, and ensure that her efforts could continue to benefit more people without compromising her values. The thought of making a difference alongside someone like her filled him with a new sense of purpose and anticipation. And so, the small cafe continued to thrive, not because of wealth or fame, but because of the unwavering bravery and selfless heart of one extraordinary maid. Each day brought new challenges, yet she faced them with courage, patience, and compassion. And the billionaire, observing quietly, realized that witnessing such heroism had changed him forever, teaching him lessons that money, power, and status never could. The city had returned to its usual rhythm after the storm, but the small cafe remained a place of quiet strength, known among locals for the courage and kindness of the young maid who worked there. The billionaire continued his discreet visits, watching her in action, learning more about her resilience and her ability to face challenges with unwavering composure. His admiration for her grew deeper with every passing day. But he still had not revealed who he truly was. One late afternoon, as the cafe filled with its usual mix of regulars and newcomers, a tense situation arose. A group of robbers burst through the front door, brandishing weapons and demanding money. Panic spread immediately. Customers screamed, ducked behind tables, and tried to flee, while the owner froze, unsure how to protect everyone. The maid, however, did not falter. She stood in the open, her posture firm and calm, speaking to the robbers in a steady, composed voice. "Please, no one needs to get hurt," she said clearly, her eyes meeting theirs without fear. "Take what you want, but let everyone leave safely." Her courage shocked the robbers, who were used to intimidation and panic. Seeing her so composed and unafraid unsettled them. Meanwhile, she signaled to the customers, guiding them toward the back exit quietly and efficiently, making sure no one tripped or got hurt in the process. The billionaire watched from his corner, completely in awe. He had seen leaders and security professionals in his world, but her quick thinking, bravery, and calm demeanor under extreme pressure left him speechless. The robbers grew impatient. Frustrated by her resolve and the organized exit of the customers, one of them stepped closer, threateningly, but she did not flinch. Instead, she kept her voice calm and authoritative, refusing to escalate the situation. "There's no need for violence," she said firmly. "We can all leave here safely." Her bravery and composure eventually forced the robbers to retreat. They left quickly, muttering in anger, but no one had been harmed. Customers emerged from hiding, shaken but safe, and they surrounded the maid, thanking her repeatedly. She merely smiled and said, "I'm glad everyone is safe. That's all that matters." The billionaire felt a profound respect for her. He realized that her courage was not a temporary trait or a response to specific circumstances. It was a part of who she was, embedded deeply in her character. She acted rightly, even when danger was present, and without thought of personal gain. This kind of heroism, quiet yet extraordinary, was rare, and he was witnessing it firsthand. After the incident, he approached her cautiously. He wanted to express his admiration and gratitude, but words seemed inadequate. He listened as she calmly reassured frightened customers, cleaned up the minor mess left behind, and returned to her work without showing any sign of distress or fear. Her resilience was remarkable, and he realized that she had faced far greater challenges in her life and handled them with the same grace and determination. Over the next few days, he continued visiting the cafe, contemplating how best to approach her. He had come to understand her world, her struggles, and her values. He wanted to help without undermining her independence, to support without overshadowing her courage. His heart told him that she deserved recognition, safety, and opportunity. But he needed to be careful in how he revealed his intentions. Finally, he decided the time had come to reveal his true identity. He walked into the cafe, this time without disguise, and approached her with sincerity. She looked up, slightly surprised as she had grown used to seeing him as just another customer. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I've been visiting this cafe for weeks. I wanted to see life as it truly is. And during that time, I've seen something extraordinary in you." Her eyes widened slightly, curiosity mingling with cautious attention. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I am not just a customer," he said quietly. "I am a billionaire. My life is very different from yours, but I came here to observe, to learn, and to understand the real courage that exists in the world. And I have seen it in you. The way you face danger, care for others, and handle every challenge with bravery and humility has left me speechless." She stared at him in disbelief, trying to process his words. For a moment she did not speak, her mind racing with thoughts. Finally, she said softly, "I didn't know. I never thought it mattered who you were. I just do what I believe is right." Her humility struck him even more deeply. Here was a woman who had faced life's hardships with courage and grace, whose values were unwavering, whose actions were guided not by recognition or reward, but by a true sense of duty and compassion. He realized that his wealth, power, and influence had no bearing on her courage or character. He explained to her that he wanted to support her, not as a wealthy man trying to control her life, but as someone who admired her strength and wanted to ensure her efforts could continue to make a difference. He proposed helping her expand the cafe, provide financial security for her family, and create opportunities that could benefit her community, all while respecting her independence and values. She was hesitant at first, unsure how to react. Her life had always been about self-reliance and humility. Accepting help felt unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Yet she also recognized that his support could amplify the good she already did, allowing her to help more people and create a lasting impact. After careful thought, she agreed, not out of desire for wealth, but as a means to continue her mission of helping others together. They began planning how to expand the cafe, focusing on maintaining its warmth and community spirit. They discussed ways to employ local people, support education, and create a space where kindness and courage could thrive. The billionaire was amazed at her vision, which was not about fame or wealth, but about creating a lasting, positive impact on the lives of those around her. As the cafe began to grow, the community noticed the changes. More people came to visit, not just for the food and coffee, but for the spirit of care and bravery that the Maid had always embodied. The cafe became a hub of hope, learning, and compassion, attracting volunteers, local families, and even children eager to learn from her example. Throughout this transformation, the Maid remained humble and grounded. She continued to serve customers personally, manage the staff, and handle crises with the same calm and decisive attitude she always had. She did not let the attention or resources change who she was. Her courage, humility, and dedication remained the heart of the cafe and the community it served. The billionaire, working alongside her openly, realized that he had gained more than he had given. He had witnessed true courage and kindness, learned lessons in humility and selflessness, and found inspiration in someone whose life was defined by integrity and bravery. Her actions had not only saved lives in moments of crisis, but had inspired countless others to act with compassion and courage in their own ways. And so, the small cafe continued to thrive, a place of warmth, courage, and inspiration. The maid's heroism, both in extraordinary moments and in her everyday acts of kindness, had left a lasting mark on the community and on the billionaire, who had learned that true greatness is measured not by wealth or status, but by the courage, compassion, and integrity one shows in every action. Together, they had created something extraordinary, proving that even in a busy, noisy city, acts of bravery and kindness could shine brightly and change lives forever. The cafe had become more than a place to eat and drink. It had become a symbol of courage, kindness, and community. With the billionaire openly working alongside the maid, the space began to transform. Yet, despite the influx of resources, the heart of the cafe remained the same. Her unwavering dedication to helping those around her. She continued to handle the day-to-day work personally. From serving coffee to wiping tables, her presence kept the cafe grounded. She made sure that every customer felt welcome, that each member of her staff was respected and supported, and that the community knew this cafe was more than a business. It was a place of care and support. The billionaire provided guidance and resources, but he never interfered with her decisions. He had learned that her strength lay in her autonomy and humility. Together, they devised plans to expand the cafe while keeping its personal, home-like atmosphere. They introduced educational programs for local children, workshops to help young adults learn skills for employment, and events that encouraged community involvement. People came not just for food, but for a place where kindness and courage were celebrated. The maid led every initiative, making sure the spirit of the cafe reflected her values. Her family benefited greatly from the changes. She could now provide better education for her siblings and support for her aging parents without overworking herself. Despite this newfound security, she remained humble, never letting the comforts of life diminish her compassion. She continued to live modestly, choosing to reinvest resources into the cafe and community rather than for personal luxury. The community, inspired by her example, began to act more compassionately in their own lives. People volunteered at the cafe, helped neighbors, and supported one another in ways they had never done before. The ripple effect of her courage and kindness became visible in small acts across. The neighborhood people holding doors for strangers, sharing meals, or simply offering a smile when someone needed it most. The billionaire, watching this transformation, realized that he had underestimated the power of one person's actions to change an entire community. He had thought he was helping her, but in truth, she had shown him lessons about humanity that money could never buy. Her bravery, humility, and selflessness had inspired him to become a better person, to approach life with more empathy and care. One day, the cafe faced a small emergency when a water pipe burst during the night. Employees arrived in the morning to find the floor flooded and equipment at risk. Without hesitation, the maid coordinated repairs, ensured no one was hurt, and directed staff to save valuable supplies. She treated the situation with calm authority, inspiring everyone to act together efficiently. By the time the billionaire arrived, she had already restored order, demonstrating once again that her leadership was not about authority, but about care, courage, and integrity. Over time, the cafe became a community hub where people shared not only food but stories, hopes, and lessons in kindness. Children learned the importance of courage and empathy from the maid's example, and adults discovered that leadership could be quiet, humble, and selfless. Her influence grew beyond the walls of the cafe, touching lives in ways that no one could have imagined. Despite the recognition she began to receive, she remained focused on her core values. She never sought fame, publicity, or personal gain. Every action she took was rooted in her desire to help others and make life better for those around her. She was a leader without pretense, a hero without accolades, a friend to everyone she met. The billionaire often reflected on how his perspective had changed since meeting her. He had come to the cafe looking for authenticity, but what he found was much more profound. He found courage, humility, and humanity embodied in one person. He had learned that true greatness comes from consistent, selfless actions, and that leadership is not about power, but about inspiring and uplifting others. Together, they developed programs to help other struggling small businesses in the area, sharing resources and knowledge without expecting anything in return. The Maid's influence encouraged a new culture of support, kindness, and collaboration. Local schools invited her to speak to students about courage and compassion, and community members looked to her for guidance and inspiration. She accepted these opportunities not for personal glory, but to share lessons she believed in deeply. Her story became a beacon for many who faced hardships. People from neighboring areas would visit the cafe, not just for the food, but to witness the spirit of generosity and resilience she had cultivated. The small acts of heroism she had displayed in the past, saving children, handling crises, supporting her family, became part of a larger narrative of hope and perseverance that motivated countless others to act with courage in their own lives. Throughout all of this, the billionaire remained a close but respectful presence, providing resources, guidance, and support whenever necessary, but never overshadowing her vision. He admired her unwavering principles, her ability to lead with humility, and the strength she displayed in every action. In many ways, he realized he had become her student rather than her benefactor, learning lessons that money could never teach.